Welcome to the Soul Sisters series, where you'll get thought-driven, inspiring topics for your soul with Vonne and Brenda Rachel. Okay, so welcome again to our Soul Sisters series. We are at part 6. I'm Vonne.
I'm Brenda.
And together, we are the Soul Sisters. Are we ever going to get tired of that? I don't think so. No. Oh, gosh. Anyway, welcome. So today at part 6, we're going to be talking all about pain as part of our life plan. And then we're going to be moving into the paddle and the flip drill as an analogy for life. And I'm not going to give away any more right now, but we are going to be ending with that today. Last week, we did talk all about the angels, and we had so much to say we did not get to this part.
I know.
So we're creating a special episode just really to address I'm going to say frustrations, depression, anxiety, stress, hopelessness, and everything else we feel when life takes a turn and pain becomes part of our life plan. And we're going to talk a little bit about what that means too. So let's get into it, sis. You ready?
I sure am.
Okay,
Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we just get right into it? And I sort of want you to focus on what you think is like the most sort of severe pain, frustrating pain, everything I just sort of mentioned in the intro, the depression. I know in your book, you talk a lot about your suicide attempt, a fabulous chapter, the frustration, what led you to it. Very thoughtful. We're not advocating suicide. We are acknowledging it as a very real part of life. And Brenda did have one attempt several years ago. You can read about it in detail in her book. We don't discuss it in detail on the Soul Sister series, but we're using our books, her book, my books. Well, you have 2 books and my books. I have a link to all of those down below, and there's a lot to mention here. But if you are interested, check out the links below because a lot of the information, well, all of the information in those books really contributes to how we live our life, but set a foundation for how we would do it when pain got us. Oh, yikes, and it got us. So why don't you start?
Okay, so where I was most impacted by pain was in my early days of fibro, before I understood what fibromyalgia was and that I had it.
Yeah.
And because it affected all areas of my body, I had no idea what was going on. So, it was very frustrating because everywhere hurt.
Yeah.
So if you go to a doctor and you say everywhere hurt, but it's like the flu, so I kept getting told I had the flu.
Yeah.
So anyway, I had to eventually, once I knew that this was ongoing and that nobody really could help me diagnose what I had, I had to just embrace the idea that this was part of my life and that I was... I never knew when I was going to be hit with having to be off from work with the flu.
Yeah.
And so I just, because of at that time I was studying wanted to be a science of mind minister.
Yeah.
And so I was really embracing the idea of understanding that my body in its perfect, whole, and complete state was the truth for me on this planet. But I was having a hard time believing it in my physical mind.
Yeah. So when you say, so when you say truth, that was your spiritual truth.
That was my
resonating with your soul.
Yes.
That you're not here to suffer.
Correct.
And be in this pain.
Correct. And so the dichotomy was, for me, if you're trying to embark on a path of being a practitioner and then go into ministry school to be a minister, but you have all this going on in your body that isn't healing. And even though I was doing my prayer treatments, et cetera, for it, it was like, what am I missing here? Like,
right.
Why is this student not getting the lesson?
I know.
And so it was so, for me, very, very, very frustrating. Yeah. And I almost thought, like, maybe I'm not meant to be a minister because I don't get it. Quote, get it.
Right.
And so that was like so devastating to me because I was going down that path, and I had been for like 2 years prior to when this all happened.
Yeah.
But it all happened. So I'm just saying that for me, dealing with the reality on the physical plane and knowing what the reality, which I'll call the truth, the spiritual truth, on the spiritual plane, it was like I was transporting myself between two worlds. Yeah. So I'd be laying on the floor, writhing in pain, and saying, like, I know my body is in perfect health. I know my body is in perfect health. And not being able to, or something similar to that. Yeah. And not being able to get up off the floor and go feed myself to go to bed.
You see the dichotomy, audience.
Yeah. And so anyway, I was having such a struggle within myself to, do I carry on? Do I carry on? And so finally what happened with my classes.
Oh, with your classes?
With my classes.
Yeah.
Right. And so eventually, so what happened was that was taken out of my hands. It just became too difficult for me to, because at this point I was still working full time. Yeah. Except when I was off with my flu days. Yeah. And coming home from work. Yeah. So an hour and a half commute home and turning around and driving an hour or an hour to over an hour to my class each way. Oh, gosh. In the evening. Yeah. And twice a week. Yeah. Until finally I couldn't do it. Yeah. And so I said to myself that this is my earthly truth, that I am in a lot of pain, and I know out there a lot of you are suffering with physical and emotional pain. And when you come to your breaking point, and a lot of us do, where we just have to turn it over to our higher power, God, source, whatever we want to call it, and just say whatever. And in my case, I decided to try to commit suicide because of a number of reasons, which are in my book. But any event, and that attempt was intervened by the angels. So I'm still here. So anyway, living with the pain, is just a part of who I am today, still to today. And I accept that the physical pain is an earthly, natural affliction. And I choose to accept that I've created this, so I don't blame anybody or any entity or anything for why I'm sick, like God made me sick or to learn something or whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I know that this is totally my creation of all the things that I've experienced and will continue to experience while I'm on earth, and I'm hoping they get less and less and more infrequently. But it also helps me to stay really balanced in knowing and really affirming inside myself of my spiritual truth. I just know with the spiritual truth that I keep saying that even now, that I am perfect, whole, and complete. I am perfect, whole, and complete. And I just know, for me, that just resonates inside. Like I just feel just rejuvenated when I say those words to me, right? I came here as a spiritual being to live a human existence, and I'm doing the best that I can with this human existence, but I really want to just live a spiritual truth, live it as spiritually as I can,
Yeah, it's so interesting. One of the reasons we're talking about this today, audience, is because we are basically conditioned, in my experience as a bereaved mother who lost a daughter in 2005, to suicide. So that's my pain point. And so ditto to everything you basically said. Just because we experience the pain in different ways, it will express mentally, emotionally, physically. And I mean, we're sick spiritually when that happens, if we're in touch with our spiritual selves. And we've talked about that in previous episodes. So, we discuss all of in the first couple of episodes how we arrived at our spiritual, connection and even our purpose work. So we're not going to talk about that today. But the physical, and you and I have had so many conversations over the years about this, when there's the pressure on us to, especially when you go in as a minister or a practitioner, you want to help others, you want to teach, right? I will wager a majority of leaders, right, in any industry that is on that stage, on that podium at the top, having to be the example, will basically hide all their flaws, their pain, their vulnerabilities, their complete authenticity, because our society, and I've talked about this ad nauseum, does not allow us to be truthful with ourselves and in society with our pain. And it's just such a sorrowful thing for me to have had to come to realize through the loss of Janaea, and be in bereavement for 18 years and not feeling supported in a number of ways. And I'm going to say, and you can maybe comment, when we're ill, when we are disabled, when we are limited, when we are dealing with any kind of, illness, it doesn't even have to be a disease. It can just be a recurring chronic illness, such as I struggled with for years and years, since basically 2009. And I'm getting that under control. But we do feel isolated, don't you think?
Absolutely. We isolated, and also, I would say, discriminated against. Because especially for me, I was working in a very large office of 350 people, continually going to work. But when I was off sick, I would be off sick longer than anybody else. And
I'm writing that down to come back to.
Right. And so, and I just felt that I was being looked at by my superiors, that I was trying to take advantage of the system, like buck the system and all that kind of stuff. And that made me, even whether that was truthful or not truthful, I don't know, but that's how I felt. And
I just have to ask, so you thought that they were judging you and thinking that because you were ill longer than other people, it took you, let me rephrase that, it took you longer to recover than other people?
Well, it took me, and it was never recovered through the illness. I would still come back ill to work, but I could actually come back.
Me too.
Yeah, and you know all about dragging your rear end into work.
But so you thought they were judging you, but you don't know if that's a real fact, but they might have been, because as they call it, quiet firing today. I'm going to wager, sorry, employers and corporate, America and corporate global, the expectation to show up and
perform and do all your duties. That's what I I work,
because you can be replaced, and in some cultures this is much more evident than others. But when you're that person that tries to show up, and this is what I sort of frame in my life as limitations I've had to learn to live with over the years, not understanding them for many, many years, by the way. And when I finally did start to understand them, and this for me is living with post-traumatic stress disorder, which I manage, and anxiety goes along with that, and then the chronic flu-like illnesses I would get repeatedly. And I love what you say about, well, love it, but I'm going to acknowledge what you say because I resonate with it. You go back to work, but you're still not well.
Correct.
You're just well enough to do the job until you get, taken out. I used to say, I'm out of the game again.
Yep.
And,
here we go again.
For a long time, when I was really, really sick, I had fantastic employers that allowed me to work at home. So I'd be sitting there like this, but still working because I wanted to save my sick days and do the job. And a lot of that was just basically being so out of touch with what was really going on with me, which was now 9 years, 10 years later, after living with PTSD and not knowing that, it was just decimating my body. Fortunately, angels, my creation, call it what you want, I never got a disease that took me out for permanent life disability, but some people do. And I'm not going to talk today at all about what I think that grief and sorrow, does to us inside, that low, horrible energy, that toxicity of illness. But I do believe it is responsible for a number of diseases and death. And I knew that was not an option, a possibility for me if I didn't look after myself and pay attention to myself. And so I just wanted to throw in here. So for me, it wasn't about healing it. Well, it was for a number of years until it wasn't a few years ago. And just what you said, accepting this is part of my life,
right,
and lowering the bar significantly, what I had set for myself to be perfectly healed, because I, like you, wasn't studying to be a minister, but an angel healing practitioner, an example for others how to not get stuck in your cycle, not get stuck in the pain. But then I switched my body of work about 5 years ago to, no, let's honor it. We're humans. We're humans. And I was thinking I was getting it wrong by wanting the physical to need to represent the inner, what you said, our spiritual truth. We are perfect, whole, and healthy. Right?
Perfect, whole, and complete is
for you. So mine is perfect, whole, and healthy. But I'm already that inside. And when I gave up, I had an epiphany probably like several months ago where I'm like, it's okay if you don't quite reflect that on the outside yet or ever. Honor that that's your truth inside and live from the inside out.
Exactly. And I absolutely love that, because when I'm sitting at home and I'm feeling like really not well, and only I know what my gauge is.
Yeah.
But I sit there and I go, but today's a good day because it isn't as bad as it was before. And so, because I know how really bad was. So when I have like a day that's not that bad, it's like, okay, I'm not there yet on the yardstick to where I want to be.
Right.
But I'm not where I was.
Yeah. So I want to also talk a little bit. So first of all, I want to acknowledge, so for anybody watching this or listening to this on audio, I really encourage people, and I think you'd agree with me, sis, to just really, if you're not perfect on the outside, health-wise or in any other way, it's A-okay, because my belief is that when we embrace that perfection inside, changes will occur on the outside as well.
Correct. Absolutely.
So, just think about that.
I believe that 1,000%.
Yeah. So I do want to move a little bit to, so we're living with, we honor the physical. For me, it was like a huge difference in my healing journey, in my grief. I've always stated from the very, very beginning when I published my first book, Divine Healing, that not everyone is capable and achieves the healing that others might look at as optimal full healing. But whatever it is for you, that's okay. And we talk about gauges, and you need to, well, you don't need to, but I set them for myself. Because I think, I'd like you to speak about this a little bit too. And then I want to circle back to having this pain with perfect spiritual health as the contrast, and kind of what we think about that. Because we've also talked about, the contrast that this world, is unlimited in terms of light, dark, happy, sad, healthy, ill, etc., etc. There's a contrast and an opposite for just about everything on this planet. So in this world of contrast, pain is a reality.
Absolutely.
For many people.
And all kinds of pain.
Right, right. So for me, it doesn't really matter where the pain comes from. It's just pain. And suffering, by the way, when I looked up, what's the difference between pain and suffering? So suffering is just really in agony for a long period of time about the pain. It just, and we can suffer for years. We can suffer for a lifetime. And so in terms of, I want to talk a little bit about, before we get to, as I said, this spiritual, it's part of the life plan that we create. But this idea that when we understand the pain, I still think in the human body, it is our choice to decide how we want to live with that pain and not giving into it. Like, I guess in simplest terms, we can either give into it, just, make no decision about it and live with it. And by giving in and into it and living with it, I think there can be extremes about what we, like, some people just want to keep getting sicker and sicker and sicker and be treated and, and with respect, commiserate with others that also are living really crappy lives and life dealt them a really bad hand and, and all of that. And if that's the way you're living, that is your truth. But I also think that it makes a difference, like, so the fine line between it being part of our soul incarnation for other reasons, and then just it, like honoring it and just respecting it and accepting it really in the simplest terms as, I got this, what do I want to do with it? And this is why you'll see different people with varying diseases, needing, dealing with just almost incredible things, like, and triumphing over it. And others of us will sit back and go, how'd they do that? Like, I could never do that. And they serve as inspiration. And so we could argue that one's intrinsic attitude towards life, cup half full, cup empty, I'm going to beat this, I'm sick, and, it's just going to get worse, and right? Like, they're all different ways to approach living with pain. But I never wanted to get stuck in it. How about you? So it's sort of, so for me, I just want to quickly say, so not wanting to get stuck in it, but yet not being able to deny the fact that I am a bereaved mother. I'm bereaved. I'm a bereaved daughter. We lost both our parents. So in the truest sense of the word, we're orphaned. I don't know if you can be orphaned as an adult, but we have no parents. We've lost, a lot of family. And but none of those deaths have really rocked me. Janae's was like, laid me on the floor. So while I can't deny the bereavement, just like maybe you can't deny the fibro or anybody else out there living with something that's incurable. And I think fibro is incurable still, right?
There's no cure for it.
Right. And so there's other diseases out there that aren't incurable. So we're just likening the two together, using them both as the analogy for when you are in this reality of something that can just drag you down and keep coming at you. And you never know, like for you, you might never know when a symptom's going to hit and take you down, and you're, part of your body's going to give out, or you don't have energy, or you're sick, or, whatever. And so also for those of us in bereavement, we never know the triggers that are going to set us back. It could be temporary, but, the longer we're in this stuff, you live with it. There's that sorrow. There's that part of your heart missing. It's not going to be replaced. And a mistake I believe that a lot of people in bereavement, just a shout out for those who are bereaved, dealing with difficult loss, make is the fact that they try and repair that. They try and, it happened, push it away. They don't really get into the nit grit of the pain and really face it. And I think that is also, while we're not talking about that today, I think that's a huge piece in one, being able to make a choice to decide, do you want to stay at the worst of this, or do you want to do what you can to accept it, but still, like you say, it's a good day today. Today wasn't as bad as another day. Mm-hmm. And my guess is you have more of those than really super bad days now in your life, mm-hmm. would you say? Mm-hmm. But the other piece I want to acknowledge here, and I didn't say it earlier because I forgot it, but we are really, when we were talking about going back to work, and you have to go back sick, or in some cases, you don't even have time to really grieve. You got to put it off because the job is a calling. You got to make the paycheck. So I call it sort of the economy of grief. Mm-hmm. Everything has a timeline and a dollar figure when it deals with our pain. Mm-hmm. And that is another huge reason
when we're working for an employer.
Sure. Mm-hmm. But even when you're not, mm-hmm. and just getting a job, and feeling like you're saying discriminated against and you can't work, the dollar figure is you're broke, mm-hmm. and there's not enough support and resources, pensions, disability, mm-hmm. to help people.
Mm-hmm. No, but what I meant,
but I get what you're saying.
It's different for people who absolutely have to go into and report to somebody, mm-hmm. To get their food on the table, rather than somebody has that under their own control and their own responsibility, right. And they can figure that out themselves.
But here's the thing. I think that there are millions of people that, and we've had this conversation before, so you and I both retired, mm-hmm. and, we're doing our own other thing, mm-hmm. but I could never go and work for someone again. Mm-hmm. We've talked about this.
Yeah.
And so in terms of just throwing in this to think about it in economic terms, I have to plan a life where I know I could never punch a clock again. Mm-hmm. And so for those people, and I don't know how many of the, audience members watching this or listening to this are in that situation, but there will be a percentage of people that I'm sure are resonating with you and I are saying, mm-hmm. because you said you can't punch a clock again either.
No.
You're done.
No, I cannot keep any kind of time frame for anything. Everything I do in a day is just as it unfolds.
Right, but you could never go and get a job is what I'm saying.
Yep.
You could never go and work for someone else again.
Yep.
And we see where we live, I won't say the name of the city, but we see a lot of seniors. Mm-hmm. We're both seniors, by the way, right. And seniors. No, and anyway, and we are seniors, and I'm a baby senior for sure, and just in my mid-60s. But we're at that point where we can collect some pensions, and in our country, in Canada, they're decent. They're okay. And then if you've worked, you have, in Canada, either a paid pension. So, so enough just to say we have enough income at the moment to support ourselves where we're not, feeling threatened, mm-hmm.
by
economics. But we, in our small city, we see a lot of seniors working, don't we?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I know.
My God.
One fellow I talk to weekly at one of my favorite grocery stores, and he's over 80.
Holy late 80s. And I've said, and listen, there might be some people, for sure, a percentage of people who want to work, go punch a clock, and do certain jobs because they just love it so much and they want to keep busy and active. Mm-hmm. More power to them. Mm-hmm. But really, we're speaking about the reality here where people can't make ends meet, and certainly with increasing, economic stresses around the world, our health plays such a huge factor, mm-hmm. Really, bottom line, whether or not we feel safe.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Do we feel safe today? And what if something happens? What if something happens and my health has taken me, down a turn, where like I'm really kind of like done. And anyway, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole too much, but I'm just saying these things play out the longer you're living with a health issue, mm-hmm. or you're living with something that can threaten to take you down, or it happens suddenly and you're not prepared for it. And whatever country you live in, you may have better medical care than other countries or worse. I don't know. But the fact is that pain is just part of what we live with. And, it provides that contrast I wanted to next get into a little bit. So I think we've pretty much identified here. We live with pain. We manage and have approached it and decided how we want to live our lives with something that is always going to be there as part of our incarnation, our experience. And I will have to honestly say here, though, there's nothing else completely in my life other than losing Janaea in 2005 that would be painful for me. It could have been painful at the time, but gone, I was able to deal with it. No, it doesn't form a part of my life. So when she died, I was living very differently. I was living the life that I envisioned at every stage. And so that really threw me for a loop. And so like you were saying, going back just a little bit, so you're, studying to be a minister. Do I give this up? Do I not give this up? So for me, it was more about, holy crap, is this what I created? Believing up to that point for 23 years and having my practice, my spiritual practice, and loving everything to do with metaphysics, where there, everything happens in the unseen and all that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. How could I have chosen this? Right? Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about when we choose pain as part of the life plan. Mm-hmm. And it goes back a little bit to honoring that perfect wholeness, completeness, health within us as our truth, but then finding that balance. Isn't that what you would say? I mean, that saved me. Understanding and accepting that for my truth is literally what has saved me and kept me going.
What do you mean by that? That you created your situation?
Oh, I keep going with my work, keep wanting to achieve my ultimate healing before I die.
Right.
Because I know what I'm capable of.
I was just going to say, for myself, is that I think it was very clear, what was shown very clearly to me, that my fibro, which was my very first of 4 disabilities, led me down a path of trying to commit suicide, which the angels intervened in. So that kept me on the planet, and I gave up my ministerial studies. But what became very evident was that I had no purpose. And so once I gave up my ministerial studies, it was like, okay, what now? And so I just kept going through each day, but I came into all of my extracurricular activities that I just really, really enjoyed, my rafting and paddling and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And so that became my focus, my extracurricular, and I became part of a team, several teams. And
it felt like a community sort of for you?
Correct. Yeah. Correct. And so because when I was studying, I had my spiritual classmates in my group. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden it was like, okay, I'm not going to class anymore.
Yeah.
When I got better.
Yeah.
And so I was still working all day long and long commutes and stuff like that, but no outside activities. And then all of a sudden I got into rafting and dragon boat racing. Mm-hmm. And so I had people around me, and stuff to do on the weekend and all that kind of stuff, which was very, very important. But what became evident as I continued along, and 3 more disabilities, but through those, it became very evident of what my purpose was, because I had no idea of what my purpose was up until that point. Mm-hmm. And why was I on Earth? Mm-hmm. I was just taking up space. Mm-hmm. I was just a human being taking up wasted space here. And let somebody else who really wants to be here, because I'm doing nothing. I'm just going to work every day.
And by the way, I just want to say a lot of people, and I've obviously have a vested interest in understanding suicide, and and so from the psychiatric perspective of work I've read, anytime they've released studies and things like that, and the number one thing is the people that do leave us by suicide just really feel that they're not going to be missed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so you're saying, you're taking up space. And so none of us are taking up space, but if that's the way you feel, then that is your truth.
Yeah.
And when you tie that into, and pain makes us feel like that because of the pressures to, be competitive, alpha, that we're the right person for the job, and all of that stuff. And so we've already talked about that earlier in this episode. But would you say then, when you connected to your purpose, your gift, I had a guest on not long ago who talked about she sees purpose as gift, and she's the generation, behind us. And I thought, I love that. What's your gift? Because if you don't, purpose is such a big word. So if you don't know purpose, well, what are you good at? What makes you feel like alive? Even if you feel you can't do it now or ever again. But what I want to tap into here is when you tapped into that, it was your music and, the writing and the composing and then your quotes and all of that. Did you understand the incarnation and how you had designed this pain, this, disability, the contrast with this inner perfection? Did that become sort of more clear for you?
Yes, it did. And I think it was not until I had already done the music album and I had already started my website and all that. But anyways, I still didn't know what my purpose was. I was just doing these things. So it really wasn't until I became very involved with the Angels, because that was in 2006. And so I had already given the music album. I'd already done my 6 songs.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And so, but still didn't realize it was the Angels that was channeling it. Yeah. Well, I was becoming aware, but not that I had a purpose with them. I still didn't understand.
Okay. So when you did it all make sense?
Yep.
This is
why
you're here.
I didn't die. This is why I was saved. It was the Angels who saved me. I make that really, really clear in my book. That I, with 1,000% know it was the Angels that saved me. And
well, they sure as heck saved me too. So,
Yep, exactly. And so from that point forward, once I knew that I was here to do something for them, then things began to unfold.
Okay.
And,
So and so for me, I'm just saying, so I knew immediately, as soon as, literally as within, I just would say days, but no later than weeks. When Janaea died, I was already so invested with wanting to make a difference in the way that we understand and, loss, death, and experience grief. And that mission for me has never changed. So I accepted right from the beginning this, well, it was difficult and kind of as I said earlier, what did I just create for myself? At the same time, I took responsibility for designing the life that it was this way, and Janaea played her part in it. And I actually thanked her and kind of turned it over the years into a little bit of a joke between us, her and the afterlife, and all right, so you were the one that left, and kudos to you. It took a lot of guts to do what you did. Again, not advocating suicide, but it was reality. It's the way it happened. And I absolutely, a lot of people say, oh, they took the coward's way out. I disagree wholeheartedly. That's all I'm going to say about that. And then I just sometimes would turn it into, no problem, babe. I got you. I can do this in this life. We took this on together to make a difference. And that difference, as I say, was to advocate for the bereaved and in every aspect of my work. And what I wanted to say about that was, I still have people telling me, I'll have guests on or whatever, and they'll say, oh, your daughter's still working with you, or, she's such a powerful presence in all of your work, and, et cetera, and what a legacy. So while we may not like, and this is the point I'm getting to, this is the pain, we may not like the experience of the pain and how it's come to us, but it sure does leave us with a lot of choices in terms of what we want to do with it, doesn't it?
It sure does.
And I write about in Divine Healing, and I have a self-help practice in the back of that book where I talk about embracing pain as your tool for change. It's a principle I grabbed onto many, many, many years ago, because I think, again, it was with the background and understanding and accepting this is my creation, and what, that I was going to do something positive with it. And what I want to say about when we don't accept it as our creation, and Brenda and I don't push any of our ideas on anybody. We're just talking about
this. Not at all.
This is what we do. This is our reality. But when you accept your life as your creation, whether or not you take it into the divine or you're just going to limit it to the human experience, you don't get to blame anybody else for where you are, who you are, or what is happening in your life. You manage your life and you learn to embrace it and actually manifest and create wonderful things for it, rather than sitting back and letting things happen to you, which then you can blame other people or your circumstances for. And we're just not wired like that.
No.
I never heard you once over the decades complain about your pain or situation.
Right.
Ever.
I didn't.
I know. So we're very blessed. So even when we look at soul contracts, and I've done a coaching episode on soul contracts to talk all about it. So we're not going to talk about it here. But when we talk about soul contracts, you and I contracted to be sisters in this life.
And absolutely did. And we contracted to do this show together.
Sure. So everything we do, is you can take it down to minutia if you want to, but on the larger scale, coming from the same family, the whole reason for this series is, to share with other people how two very, very different people come together as sisters, polar opposite experiences, come from the same dysfunction, and end up basically in a very similar place.
Yeah.
Both of us definitely conduits for the and angels, for angelic work, and trying to make a difference. And I believe making a difference in our small way in all of the work we do and how we conduct ourselves. That's the reason for the Soul Sisters series as a legacy, to help others and for each other to remember who we were, because it's going to be really weird when one of us goes and the other's not here, and you kind of go, oh my God. And then we'll be able to look back at this, and assuming that they still have video technology, whenever that happens. But anyway, and go, oh my God, we had some powerful messages to share with each other and the world. And I see that very much as our pain bringing us together.
Well, I was just going to say that out of our darkness, each of our darknesses, dark places in our lives, we have chosen to be lights.
Yeah.
And bring light to the world.
Yeah.
From two totally different realms of darkness.
Yeah.
And
it's cool. It's cool. Let's move really quickly before we end up, top of the hour with this episode, talking about the paddle and flip drill. So Brenda mentioned earlier that, you did mention you got into rafting, dragon boating, all of this stuff. But in your book, you talk about this whole thing about being, having, the paddle and flip drill exercise before hitting any rapids.
Yeah, no. So what it was is the flip drill was as soon as we got our life jackets on and stood around in a group at the edge of the river, before we actually got in the raft to paddle down the river, we were told that we would have to have a flip drill. And so all of us who had just been our first time, we had no clue what this was. So I could still remember that feeling of, oh my God, are they going to dump us out in the middle of like some turbulent rapids? Or like, I had no idea.
And so I just have to quickly interject, because this is an analogy for life. Are you thinking at this point, first time you go rafting, first flip drill, that you're just going to get in the raft and there might be a few currents and rapids, but you're not going to fall out. You're going to be safe and you're going to coast through the ride?
No.
Or did you anticipate?
No, I knew exactly. No, they told us they would be flipping the raft. So we all knew standing there, holding our paddles, our first time ever, like we were, up to maybe knee deep in water or whatever, not up to our thighs yet. But then we had to swim out to the rafts, which were a little ways away from the shoreline, swim out to the rafts. We had to hurl ourselves into the raft with our paddle. And so we all had to learn how to do that in our, wetsuits and our life jackets, everything heavy, very cumbersome. So how life can sometimes be really cumbersome when we're going on some kind of a journey, health journey, whatever. And so we went about, 200 meters, maybe 2 minutes down the river, because it was very slow current at the beginning. And then the rapids started. Yeah. Very light rapids. Yeah. Into heavier rapids. So in the class 2 rapids, not the class 1, but class 2, class 5 is almost unrunnable. Class 6 is not runnable. So we're in class 2. So the guide flips. We're all paddling. Yep. And he says, okay, paddles up. And then he says, I'm going to flip the raft now. So he flips the raft. So we all go out however we go out. Yep. Do our somersaults, whatever, land there. So we have our paddles and we're in the midst of this current. And we have to swim back to the raft, holding our paddle, because you never let go of your paddle, and haul ourselves in. And let me tell you, the first time I ever did that, it was harder for me to get into the raft, obviously, than get out of the raft. But I was more scared getting into the raft because I didn't know if I could do it, because I was so bulky and trying to haul myself in moving rapids. Yeah. And so, and there's nobody to help you. So everybody's trying to get it themselves.
Oh my goodness. So there's no order to people getting back into the raft.
Not one at a time.
So it's sort of like,
it's like, the fittest will survive. Correct. However, saying that the steers person who's always a guide and then there's 5 passengers or paddlers. He's in the raft, and so he's holding his paddle there to keep the raft as steady as he can in the calmer rapids, right? So I guess maybe I'll say heavy class 1 to moving into a class 2, we would the raft would be flipped.
But you can't feel the bottom of the river.
It wasn't like still water where they just go and flip the raft.
No. So you can't feel the bottom of the river. No. You're there.
You're into water over your
head. In these rapids, and life is happening either for or to you, and you got to get yourself back into the raft
with your paddle.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And even sometimes, as much as we're trained or whatever. So this is the analogy for life. Mm. As much as we're trained, these things can make us panic. Mm-hmm. And did anybody ever have trouble getting back into the river?
Oh, yeah. And so, like, all of us who had already gotten in, or, and many times I needed help. And so there'd be somebody who had already, like, a big, strong burlap person. He had already got in the raft. And so everybody extended their arms over.
So community.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'll give you a hand. You can't get in. I'll give you a hand.
Nobody's left behind.
Yeah.
No. And the raft, to be fair, it didn't keep going down the river when there were like 5 people in the water. He held the raft in a very slow, like, whatever, right position, so that it gave time for everybody to get there. I mean, we didn't have to swim a mile to the raft or anything like that, right? We were flipped out. You end up maybe, 2 or 3 feet from the raft.
Right.
So it's a very short, swim back to the raft.
Yeah.
But you're hit with the ice cold water of the river.
Yeah.
So first of all, you're hit with something that not expecting it to be that temperature.
Yeah.
And then the hardest part was for me to try and get in. So I've always said I landed like a beached whale. I I go over the side and I land in the middle of the boat. Yeah. My stomach, right?
Well, I wouldn't even, and you ultimately rafted class 4, right?
Yep.
So, experienced rafter here, and I wouldn't even listen, it's like, oh, wouldn't that be great to raft down, the Grand Canyon, the bottom, I think it's the Colorado River. I'm not sure what river it is, but anyway, no, it's not going to happen. So kudos. Mm-hmm. But the point that when I read that in your book and you were talking about it, and we are using that today as an analogy for life.
So my analogy that I wrote about in my book, that it just became so clear when the angels were channeling the book to me, most of the book to me, the steersperson is God, and the life raft are the angels, and my paddle is my faith and trust in God.
Yeah.
And so that was the analogy I got, that without God as my steersperson, and the angels being the life raft that are holding me on planet Earth through everything that I go through, and my paddle, which you never let go of, which is my faith and trust in God, I would never get through all of the strenuous rapids that I have traversed on this planet in health.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the point, with the rapids being the stuff that life throws at you, and you're knocked out of your safety.
Well, you're knocked off balance, for sure.
Well, I was completely decimated by the death of Janaea.
Yeah.
I'm not even the same person I was before her death, which you can attest to. And 18 years on, there might be a smidgen of the old Vonne in me, but
not really.
Not really, right? Because,
Say you're
completely different.
Correct.
I don't even remember who I was before the death of my daughter, but I do know I am an improved person. And it doesn't mean I was not a good person before. It just means I'm an incredibly enhanced person. I regret the circumstances that brought me to this enhancement, this evolvement that I have achieved, which is the optimal for me. Remembering in my incarnation, I have chosen to be the brightest shining light I can, and to get my lessons here to the fullest degree, so that should I have a moment to reflect before my passing, I will be able to be proud to say, you gave it everything you got. You did good. I know that's grammatically incorrect, but that's my whole purpose for me, what I want to achieve going forward. And that encompasses a gazillion things, being the best for everybody, and connection and respect and love for everybody, my family, and being the best I can for me, because then they benefit and everybody else benefits. Nobody benefits when we're suffering. Nobody. And people don't want to be around us when we're in pain and moaning and groaning and suffering. And so the other thing I think that's very uplifting, and I wanted to say, and I just love that analogy. My analogy was when Mom was alive. And again, it's so interesting because we use the rapids, unbeknownst to me, you're using the same thing. But Mom, and she passed in 2010, and it was a sudden death, right? And she's 78 and boom, she's there, and then she's not there. And, but she would always say, whenever I was coming up against some, struggles, or she was coming up against struggles, move your canoe there. We would be in these canoes side by side, and the struggle would be represented by, say, a big boulder. And, and so we would just nudge each other and just say, we got to nudge, let's nudge ourselves away, get ourselves turned around and get back in the flow. We are facing away from the flow, get the canoe turned around and get back in the flow of the current. And that was our analogy for staying in the life flow.
Beautiful, honey.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, years and years and years. Because she was we lived in the same city, Mom and I, for many years. And many years we didn't, but the years that we did, and we often had tea together. And, Mom was always having tea with us, even from the time we were children. and have these discussions and, things like that. And she got me through some pretty trying times. And so, but I always remembered, okay, I'm in my canoe and it's hitting this rock, nudge, 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 but again, it's that paddle, depending on that paddle. Without our paddle, right? Yep. You can call it a cane, you can call it a crutch, you can call it anything you want, but we call it a paddle. That is that faith and trust that something greater than ourselves will show us the way, as long as we have faith and trust in that faith.
Right.
It will deliver. Yeah. Your faith can be anything, by the way. It can be anything. So I just want to kind of close this off with adapting to our circumstances and embracing what we are experiencing, whether or not you choose to believe that you created it or you don't, and you're still in life happened to me, that's fine. But you are responsible and in charge of how you want to be impacted, negatively or positively, by the experience that can come to us rooted in pain. Would you say?
Yeah. I guess what I'll say, and I'll just keep saying this occasionally through our series, is that thoughts create things. Wayne Dyer, that was a great Wayne Dyer quote. And I have adopted that in my life and to my life. And that I just believe with every thought that I think, it creates something. And so whatever that something is can be changed with a thought.
Yeah. So if we're thinking anything super negative, I advocate for honoring it. If you feel crappy, own it. Yeah. And if you feel crappy for a while, own it.
Absolutely.
Because I think when we feel really at our lowest, it is also a chance for us to reflect. And we're going to get more into that in our next episode, part 7, where we're going to be talking all about stopping at the river's edge and what that means for us to take that moment of quiet, using that same analogy of the river, stopping at its edge. When is it time to do it? And what can we benefit from when we allow ourselves this respite? So I hope that we're not leaving you with anything but hope and inspiration for whatever you are struggling with, that ultimately you are, at your most authentic when you embrace the struggle, honor the struggle even. I absolutely respect myself, man, and give myself huge pats on the back. Yeah, I was surviving what I chose to take on, and I'm still here waving the white flag. You go, girl.
I was just going to say, that's interesting. That flashed through my mind as you said, honor the journey, whatever you said.
Well, honor the pain.
Honor the pain, and I just got honor the process.
As well.
Honor the process.
Yes. So together, honor the pain, honor the process. We will take ourselves where we most want to be. And for me, that's always, enveloped in light and love, and being the best I can, showing up for me the best way I can, so that I can really say that this life was worth it, pain and all. Ditto, ditto, ditto. I agree. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. You ready for some tea?
I sure am.
Okay. Together, we are the Soul Sisters. See you next week.
See you. Bye.